Yo, yo, yo. This is Mr. Miller, part 2 of the Aztecs. Okay, so we're talking about Tenochtitlan here, what is modern day Mexico City, or where modern day Mexico City is here in the Valley of Mexico. And what I wanted to point out was that the Aztecs had a pretty elaborate system of roads or highways that led to Tenochtitlan. And they used these roads to transport goods, and they could even travel messages or with messages 200 miles in one day. That's a pretty amazing feat. They had a series of messengers that would run along these roads and deliver mail or important things to say back to the emperor or nobles in Tenochtitlan. Uh, right in the middle of the civilization here uh, was a emperor called Ahuitzotl. And Ahuitzotl enabled the empire to grow to great distances. And he also pursued a pretty aggressive campaign to build temples in the middle of Tenochtitlan. After Ahuitzotl came Montezuma II. And here we have a situation where the two worlds, the New World, and I am doing quotes right now to myself, and the Old World, again in quotes, with Hernan Cortez in Spain. So Spain comes over to the New World around 1519, and he'll eventually come into conflict with Montezuma II. But before I get to that, I want to point out that Aztec warriors included divisions of knights, including jaguar warriors and eagle warriors. So here's Cortez and Montezuma. You'll see Cortez on the left and Montezuma on the right. Obviously this is just a recreation. It doesn't look probably anything like what the scene really was. But what's happening here is it's a clash of cultures. So we have the Europeans who are coming over. Their main quest is to conquer and take over and take resources back to Europe. And then we have Montezuma, who has no idea who these people are, what they're doing, what they want. He doesn't even really know what kind of weapons they have, what armor is, or horses. They've never seen a horse before. So it's all very strange. Montezuma, there's stories that Montezuma thought that Cortez was some sort of god, even perhaps the god Quetzalcoatl, and which, interestingly, his arrival corresponded with a ceremony dedicated to that god. So this coincidence didn't really help Montezuma out because he welcomed Cortez in, brought him into the city, excuse me, and Cortez took advantage of the situation. He quickly kidnapped Montezuma. Oh, hold on, before I get to that, I want to point out there was a native woman called Valinche who helped translate the Aztec or Nahuatl language into Spanish to Cortez. So what happened is Cortez kidnaps Montezuma. Montezuma becomes what's called a puppet for Cortez, or just is doing whatever Cortez says. And at one point he gets up and is speaking to his people. The Spanish had interrupted a sacrifice earlier, and you should know that human sacrifice, I didn't really get into it, but human sacrifice is the way that Aztecs maintained the universe. According to their religion, the god Huitzilopochtli demanded human sacrifice or human blood, and it literally kept the universe intact. So without sacrifice, without human blood, the universe would fall apart. Anyways, getting back to the story of Montezuma, Montezuma gets up, says, "Calm down, Aztecs." By this time, they're mad, and they start throwing rocks and arrows at him, and it's not completely clear whether he was killed by his own people or by the Spanish. After that, Spanish lost all their power, or their perceived power, in the city. Tried to run away at night in a night called Noche Triste, or the Sad Night, dragging all their riches and gold, and unfortunately, or fortunately, depending on your perspective, the Aztecs saw this, and, well, they attacked, and many Spaniards died. Something like 400 Spanish died on the way out, and thousands of their Indian allies. The only way the only way the Spanish were able to get into the city in the first place was they were able to take advantage of the dissent or kind of negative views of the local tribes and city-states around the Aztec Empire. They weren't happy with Aztec rule because the Aztecs demanded tribute and regular sacrifice victims. So they teamed up with the Spanish and helped them out. But at this point, Cortes has to leave with his allies, with his indigenous allies and his Spaniards, but he will return. In the meantime, after Montezuma, this leader called Cuauhtemoc takes over, but his reign is short-lived because Cortes comes back, ultimately takes over the city by blockading it or cutting off the aqueduct, and after a long, hard-fought battle, 20 million Aztecs would die, and a lot of those people would die from disease like smallpox because the Aztecs had zero resistance to many of the European diseases. Let's just take a quick look. You can see the layers of history here. What's also interesting is that when the Spanish moved in, they literally took rocks from the temples and used them to build churches and cathedrals. You can still see that today. Let's take a quick look at the Aztec culture. Their language was called Nahuatl, right here, and many people in Mexico today still speak Nahuatl. Their written language was pictographs, so kind of more literal versions of words, not quite as symbolic. Their food, was mostly made out of corn. Here we have tortillas, or tlaxcali, and it's where we get tacos from, actually. This is the sunstone, a recreation of the Great Aztec Sunstone, which represents the Aztec calendar, and there's symbols all throughout here, representing time and all the different gods and deities and months throughout the year. You can see kind of an explanation. So let's take a quick look at the different gods, several of the main gods. This is Quetzalcoatl, feathered serpent. This is actually a type of bird, and coatl is serpent. It's the same right here. And he was kind of the shapeshifter or the god of civilization. Again, you see a quetzal bird. They made their headdresses out of quetzal feathers. Another look. We have Tlaloc, who is the rain god. Obviously, this is a pretty important god because if it rained too much, their city would flood. If it rained too little, their crops would fail. Here's another stone image of Tlaloc. And then Huitzilopochtli. He is quite possibly the most important god according to the Aztecs. He was both the sun god and the god of war. There you go, Huitzilopochtli. And taking a quick look at poetry here, we get kind of wrapped up in the Aztec human sacrifice, but they did create a lot of pretty interesting poetry, highly based in metaphor. It used themes like war, meaning of life, beauty, travel, mundane, kind of everyday things, and nature. And to us today, excuse me, a lot of the poems sound strange, And this is because they were, first of all, issues of translation. Second of all, it was really, the poems weren't even meant to be written down. It was only until after the conquest that the Spanish wrote some of the poetry down. And then the poems were usually recited or sung, typically with instruments. And that's it. Thanks for watching.